Hey, what's going on, everybody? It is October 25th, Friday, October 25th, and you are listening and or watching the Daily AI Show live. With me today, we have Andy. We expect Carl will come shortly. I'm Beth. He's Andy. And today, what we're going to talk about is Dario Amadei's essay, Machines of Loving Grace. I'm just going to give you a quick thing, and then we're going to go to Andy for a more deep dive overview. Is so Dario Amade is one of the people who's in the room, right? So one of the things that is true, right? You don't need to agree with everybody's view on it, but when people are telling you what they think, when they are closer to the mountain or even maybe almost to the summit of it, they have more perspective, right? They're people who are in the room who know what's happening. Andy, do you want to give us more of an orientation?
Yeah, please. So Dario Amodei is currently the CEO of Anthropic, which makes Claude, which is one of the leading AI model developers and service providers, major player. He did his undergraduate in physics at Stanford, and then went on to earn a PhD in physics from Princeton University, where he focused on neural circuits and electrophysiology. So the biological physics, biophysics, if you will, and expressly with respect to intelligence. He started his career at Baidu, the Chinese company, but then took up a position at Google Brain as a senior research scientist. And then he went and joined OpenAI, that we all know about, where he rose to become the vice president of research and led the development of GPT-2 and GPT-3. So he's really kind of a major player at both OpenAI and Anthropic. So this is what Beth means when she says this guy is in the room. So he's written an essay that specifically is designed to first eschew the idea that he's a prophet and a visionary and all that. But because he's in the room, he feels it's useful for him to put together his thoughts about what the future of AI is like, particularly because he's been prominent in raising consideration of the risks of AI and the approach to artificial general intelligence, which that term he doesn't like, so he just calls it powerful AI. He felt it was important to paint a vision of how it could be, how we might approach the arrival of superintelligence in our society, in our economies, in our technology and science. And so he lays that out in a very careful way across the following 5 major areas of impact. 1, biology and physical health. 2, neuroscience and mental health, which is an area that he is particularly interested in. 3, economic development and poverty. 4, peace and governance. So what happens in the geopolitical sphere on the planet as AI happens. And then finally, what is the impact on work for individual humans and meaning of life? Like, where do we find meaning in our life in a world that is perhaps dominated by embodied AIs or even disembodied AIs that control bodies out there? And so what I thought would be a useful way to go about discussing this is to take each one of those and just kind of lay out a very top-line summary of what he's saying in that section and what the positive vision is for the future there. And so, Beth, does that sound good? We'll do it that way.
That sounds great. So go ahead and tee us up, and I am going to welcome Carl to the show.
Okay, great.
Here
While
we
you're doing that,
go.
I'm just going to elaborate on what Dario's view of what powerful AI is. So he
Okay.
says it's AI that's smarter than Nobel laureates in almost all fields, meaning pick the
Mhm.
Nobel laureate in that field, this AI will be smarter than that person. It's capable of solving unsolved problems, and it's capable of creative tasks. He says that the AI will have human-like interfaces, so it'll handle text, audio, video. It'll have internet access, can communicate. It can perform any virtual actions, right? Not physical actions, but virtual actions beyond top human capacity and ability. And it can operate autonomously on tasks taking hours to weeks. This is one of the features and sort of specifications we have for what agents are. Um, and it functions as a smart employee, seeking clarification when needed. It's capable of designing robots or equipment for its own use. And he summarizes this whole view of what powerful AI is as saying it's going to be a country scale of geniuses in a data center. Get that now, a country scale, like as many AIs as there are people in a country. Make it a small country if you wish, because it doesn't take that many of them. But they're geniuses in a data center. It'll be able to solve human problems rapidly, complex problems rapidly. So let's start out with biology and life science. Did you want me to summarize that quickly, or do you guys want to jump in on what you read about biology and life science?
Yeah, Carl, where are you coming from today?
I think I was gonna come from more on the what Dario was saying and more what Sam Altman's article blog post, I think a couple months back, a pretty long one too. Not, I don't think it was 14 that long, but had the same very optimistic sense to it. So I think the two from that point, and I was looking at the timelines, right? Because Dario was talking about more of the, hey, he mentioned 2026. I think it was more of like, you don't know, but you throw out a number, you throw out a date. And then obviously Sam said a couple thousand days. And I'll actually bring Jan LeCun into it because he actually said, hey, me and Sam aren't actually that far apart. Sam said a couple thousand days. I'm saying like 6-7 years. So that kind of jives into the 2 points. I Now the talk was that this entire article, not the specifics, was more about trying to combat the perception that Anthropic and Dario and people at Anthropic were more from the, I guess, de-accelerationists or the doom perspective, or totally on the side of safety.
Right, because they do talk more about safety than the other developers.
Yes. Yeah. I think though it's funny because everybody assumes that everyone made the assumption, we talked about this before, that Anthropic is the safety AI. I don't know. I think there was an interview once too. I think a couple, and yeah, and they're like, I don't know where that came from, but we just left, like Dario and people left OpenAI to do their own thing. It wasn't necessarily we wanted to be safer. It was just, oh, we want to do our own thing, and they use constitutional AI and a little bit different. So it's an interesting perspective, and maybe I didn't see it that way. I saw it as kind of like a little bit of a manifesto, a little bit of maybe a kind of a little, maybe not a roadmap per se, is whenever the leaders of AI labs say something, I feel like this is the precursor to what their things are going to be doing, what their labs are working towards, and where they see it may not all happen, but that's what they're working towards. So it gives us a glimpse of what they're thinking. And same thing with Sam, that's what they're thinking, because it's always pointing back to the blog post 2021, 2020, when they actually wrote something and people weren't paying attention. And I love how Paul Reitzer always says people should pay attention to this because that's what they're planning to do. And a year, 2 years later, oh, it's so surprising. It's like, well, if you actually read the post, that was the game plan all along. And that's what it was. So I kind of looked at it from that. some of these may come faster than others, but I think it's more of a fascinating insight into what they're thinking.
Yep. Andy, so yeah, can you give us a summary about
Sure. Yeah.
biology?
So this is interesting because this position he takes on biology and life science has a lot to do with life extension and health span extension, which another godfather of AI, Ray Kurzweil, who developed natural language processing decades ago, and you know, that is a key part of the conversational AI that we have today. And he is the sort of the AI leading fellow scientist at Google, right? So Ray Kurzweil, major player out there. We've talked about Ray, and he wrote a book called "Live Long Enough to Live Forever," or not. There is Transcendence: Live Long Enough to Live Forever. And Dario says AI can compress the next 50 to 100 years, the century of biological progress, into the next 10, 5 to 10, he says. So there are limitations on how fast that can happen, but it's going to include eradication of infectious diseases, elimination of most cancers, cures for genetic diseases, prevention of Alzheimer's, that's going to go away, improved treatments for various ailments, and doubling the human lifespan to 150 years. Okay, he anticipates in this section that when, you know, there's going to be major shifts that are required. So imagine when people aren't dying, what the impact of that is on the overpopulation of the resources of our planet. There are huge impacts to that, and that's going to require very, very careful shifting in the policy, governmental policy, and economic landscapes. So that's the picture he's painting of what AI can do. This powerful AI, you know, dramatically accelerating the capabilities that we have right now in research to advance and improve health and longevity on the planet.
Yep. So one of the corollaries to that I'm thinking that we talk about a fair amount, we'll likely talk about it even more as time goes on, but the idea that if your experts in your organization can get more done without needing the junior people to help, how do the junior people become experts, right? So if your people aren't dying, right, and like giving up their seat for a new life to come in and participate, what is happening there, right?
Yeah.
Like that's a hell of a leap to go from like for many decades, people start checking out, well, on average around 70, 80, right, in that ballpark, and now they're not checking out to 140, 150.
The biological systems have demonstrated to us that there's a requirement for flow, input and output, and there has to be this migration from generation to generation in order for it to be sustainable and containable.
Right.
You can imagine this thing overflowing the petri dish, in effect.
Right.
So
And then,
yeah, those are very important issues, and in the short term, you know, we're not going to see this happen. He goes at length in this section and in others to point out the inherent obstacles to such rapid progress that make it so that you know, the next 10 years won't look terribly different, but you know, the decade after that is going to have rapidly accelerated to the point where, again, this century of progress is going to be collapsed into the 10-year time frame.
right.
Once we get to powerful AI. Now he's saying 2026 is when it could first emerge, when it could first have a societal impact in health, you know, longevity, etc., is probably a bit beyond that because of these inherent sort of frictions to the adoption and implementation of intelligence. Because what it's delivering, and he makes this point clearly, is it's delivering intelligence. It's not delivering, you know, trucks and distribution systems and so on, although it can help design those using intelligence. there are some limits on the physical capacity of the planet to actually respond to those.
Yeah.
And by the way, human and personal and societal resistance to the adoption of all these applications of intelligence. So he does caution that these things aren't just going to suddenly click on and suddenly super intelligence takes over the planet. And he thinks of these things as science fiction and not really addressing the issues that we need to address in order to adopt and preserve the benefits that will be delivered by AI.
Right.
Yeah. And I want to jump off there, Andy, because I think he mentions the limiting factors, right? Data, there's complexity, human constraints. One of my favorite things that he said, Will, had to do with I was trying to see. Acceleration while others remain constrained by physical or social factors. What immediately I thought of is like, hey, at least they'll still need monkey fingers for a little bit longer, just a little bit, because they don't have the robots done yet. They haven't connected, so people will still need to do what they need to do. And it brings me back to thinking about how the mobile device didn't really has exponentially gone better with better like 5G, right? 4G. 3G was too slow for a lot of the things, the stream, everything that came after it. So I'm sure there's some sort of technology still that is required to, and I don't know what that is, to connect or to enable AI to be a little bit better. So I'm not sure what are those things. And to bring a little bit of business impact into it, when we talk about the speed of the physical world, I've always been thinking about adoption. So let's say the technology is available. Let's say tomorrow AGI becomes available. A lot of businesses and people, it'll be like, okay, that's fine. And it'll be like, people will be shouting from the rooftops to ourselves that AGI is here and we're all excited. But I think like the adoption from a business. So like we were talking to like a senior person at a major oil and gas company, and it's like the belief there is still 10 to 20 years for adoption. That is the true belief. So, and that is a belief in a lot of major companies. So if that's the belief, then the action for AI is minimal. And even if AGI. So the only way that this would even occur is if like ASI actually starts doing the work of these things and people see, oh, that company is using it. I should look into it. So, because I think right now we're really into the early adopters. I don't think we're even to the fast followers yet.
No,
right?
I agree. I totally agree. And that sort of brings to mind for me the reduction in, like, you have pressures coming from both angles, right? So you have a reduction in how many people, good morning, hand. You have a reduction in how many people you need to accomplish something. And you have a pressure from below in people being able to in fewer people, um in an awareness limitator, right? So you have fewer people who know what the benefit could be, and you have a pressure from above that there are fewer people who can provide it, because there fewer people are needed to provide it. Does that then not make a hierarchy? Does that not make a more extreme hierarchy than most societies are experiencing now? And I'm going to say most. I'm American. I realize I think my view of the world is like everybody's view of the world. I'm owning it. Okay. If it's not your thing, that's fine. But I find that compression a little anxiety provoking, because the way that the people who are in the room who are talking about these things, the way that they are acting is, we're going to drop stuff and it's going to be amazing. And we think y'all should start preparing now, but they don't seem to think it's their responsibility to do anything other than, hey, this is what we're seeing. Get ready.
You're on mute.
I think that's 100% because yesterday I was at a kind of big brand conference and just got a free ticket, and I wanted to listen in. And there was one AI talk. Everything else was kind of, about brand and so on. So the one AI talk was, it spent a good 15 minutes comparing AI to the invention of electricity in cars. And I was like, okay, I don't know why I'm here. And then they talked about how like, oh, it'll in the future, instead of 6 people working to do marketing and brand, there'll be 2 people to execute. And I was like, oh. And then they covered it. The person covered it with, oh, we'll be able to pay people more. I was like, yeah, because you have 2 people instead of 6 people. I was like, of course you would pay people more. And then it was like, oh, and then, buy my stuff. We're developing this AI tool, blah, blah, blah. And I think it's like, okay, you kind of dropped the bomb where half the people in this room will be unemployed because this will happen and we're building this, but you never actually talked in depth about it. So it's like, it's just a professional talking about AI where they think it's going to go, and this is what it is, and you got to prepare for it. I think it's such a take where like, okay, well, how do people prepare for it? What do they need to do? Like, how will their careers go? And when you talk about 5 to 7 years, how about either the people who are currently mid-career? How about the people closing out their career? And how about the people just starting their career? What does that look like for everybody? And I think the big piece is, I've been thinking about this a lot more, is the change management piece. Because what we're noticing is AI adoption is one thing. So you have all like Dario and Sam, here's all the cool stuff. But what you'll notice is they drop the tech, but then and I think that's intentional. Leave it to us to figure out how to implement it.
Mm-hmm.
Or you can sign a 2-year contract with Microsoft and get Copilot, and then can get confused why most of your staff aren't using it. Yeah, you can do that. That's another. That's another show. And hey, Agentforce is no different, because I know Mark Benioff hates my Copilot or whatever. But that's the thing, is like, adoption is one thing, but sustainability of that is another thing. Because I don't take Excel. I don't know half the features in Excel. I know what I know, and I'll just keep doing what I know. And if I need something else, I will stop using Excel. I'll just go to use like advanced data analysis now. I'm like, I don't know half the stuff, the buttons. I'm sure I can be way more efficient, but I choose not to because I'm comfortable with what I'm comfortable doing. So how can we enable that action for people, and 3 months later they're still doing that action, versus, oh, this is cool, but I just forgot how to do this, so I'm going to go back to exactly what I was doing, even though it's more inefficient. I'm comfortable with that inefficiency because it works for me.
Mm-hmm.
I think the answer to that is delegation. When AI gets to the point where you can just pass off tasks to it. Hey, do this. Well, there's something on my to-do list, or just go look at my to-do list and see what you can knock out. That's going to be a game changer there. My game is going to change. I'm up level my game when that happens. Okay, let's move on to the next section that Dario discusses, which is neuroscience in the mind. Remember, his PhD in physics from Princeton was on neural circuits up here, biological neural circuits, and electrophysiology. So this is an area where he's really, really in his wheelhouse. He says AI's role will be to extend the understanding and treatment of mental conditions. And how will that happen? It's going to happen in advances in molecular biology, in genetics, importantly, because there's so many genetic conditions that are transmissible. And there's now advanced technologies like CRISPR, gene editing, that can be deployed in humans to actually correct genetic defects in a human. It's going to happen with neural measurement and intervention. So imagine scanning your brain in real time and seeing what the neurons are doing and being able to intervene with that, to influence it through some kind of new technology that is not yet developed, but AI will develop, that will allow us to influence the operation of the neural circuits, and behavioral intervention. So programmatic, adjustments to the human behavior, either through reinforcement learning applied to humans, or negative reinforcement, like electroshock.
Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding.
Okay, so the thing that I find alarming and missing in that is that seems to be an individual approach, and mental health is often something that humans experience in community with each other, and the efficacy of the community has a lot to do with how the mental health interventions or treatment or those sorts of things move forward. And that is like that, I just find that also kind of really interesting in this context, because we're already seeing that uh, AI has very effective emotional intelligence. AI can say things to us, can now emote with their voice in a way that feels very satisfying to humans, but isn't necessarily like there's a piece missing there. And that I'm not sure we're paying a lot of attention to that. But Andy,
That's a very interesting point, Beth. I think that is important. And does AI actually advance the experience of human community by disemploying them and getting them to spend more time with each other?
well,
But I would argue that it's actually in the place of employment where I've had most of my social interaction. So, what does the change in society look like when we need, for mental health reasons and just for general meaning of life,
right.
we want to have much more engaging interactions with a wider group of people than just our nuclear family and the small group of coworkers that we interact with.
So one of the things that I'm referencing, I should reference out loud, is addiction research. And the initial addiction research that was being done with mice said that, mice alone in a maze doing the research will just hit the little button that gives them more and more of the drug, heroin, morphine, like whatever it is. It will do that until it kills itself. And so that the assumption there was that these are highly addictive substances, right? And the minute you get a little bit in your brain, your body, you're just like gone forever. But more recently, someone was like, well, that's not really the way that mice hang out, right? Like mice are in community. And when you put it in community, that did not happen to the
Right.
extent.
Even
Right?
when they had access to the addictive substances, they were satisfied with the communal interactions rather than going in a cage where they're isolated and have nothing else to do.
Right.
Yeah, you're going to get addicted to that. I do recall that, and that's really an important advance of our understanding of just how important it is in society that we interact with each other and find meaning and satisfaction from that. Okay, I want to make one quick point about this section on neuroscience and mind, and then we'll move on to economic development and poverty. And it is that Dario says mind uploading is possible, but faces significant challenges. It's likely beyond the 10-year scope that we're discussing, but mind uploading to an artificial intelligence is possible. Put that one in your pipe. Okay, economic development and poverty.
Boosh. Now we move on. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. AI plans for addressing economic issues in the world, between the developing world and the already developed world, and also inequalities across the strata of economic accomplishment, ranging from poverty to the ultra multi-billionaire class. that has to address human factors and institutional weakness in addressing these things. And so the AI could, he argues, aid the developing world in catching up economically, but he's less confident in AI's ability to address inequality and growth. The development of the developing world faces major challenges like pervasive corruption. So how do you take away the grabbing, the taking that's happening, where people are taking more than they deserve? How do you shift the mentality of a developing country, so that there's a greater propensity for it to arrive at a state of equality of opportunity rather than inequality as we see today? Okay, so there are intrinsic challenges to be addressed, but AI can assist with health, as we've discussed. It can assist with food security, with climate change mitigation, and it can address through education, it can address the resisting factors of ignorance and superstition. So all of those things can work together to improve the economic prosperity of all on the planet. And that's the positive vision of it. The negative vision of it, of course, is that people who already have control of the power and the AI, let's just take Elon Musk, for example, who has the resources of many countries combined together, and also has access to the most powerful compute center that has yet been developed, which is a cluster that he specifically aggregated and put into practice. So he's got control of the buttons and levers of AI, and is his objective to assist humanity in its collective prosperity, or is it concentrating wealth for purposes that will only be understood by the people who are behind the scenes in the billionaire class?
Carl, unmute yourself because I want to hear what you're saying.
Oh, sorry. Junmi has made me mute myself so many times that it becomes a habit. So now on Junmi, the thing's gonna be. So I think that's the argument that open source folks really want, like, hey, we want to make sure these models are available to everybody. Obviously runs into the security aspect, and there's arguments back and forth. I still think though there's going to be a big disparity gap between, again, those countries who have it, those who don't. There's even arguments that certain countries like North America will have it, and then laws preventing like European Union from having some of these tools. But even that disparity, and then disparity for like third world countries who don't even have access, won't even have access to get the benefits that this thing can do, according to Sam and according to Dario. So I think that's something, and maybe the idea is AI will help solve those issues to help bridge that gap. If that's the case, then somebody has to be working on that with like using AI to help bridge that. I haven't seen anybody working on that aspect. I've seen a lot of like, hey, we'll accelerate, but like, hey, how do we distribute this to just beyond early adopters? Like,
right.
Remember, like, I always go back to, I remember when I was in Peru, I think that country bypassed the landline, right? So like no landline, went straight to the cell phone just because they couldn't afford to do the infrastructure and whatnot. So I'm thinking, hey, this would be an awesome opportunity for countries to leapfrog and, totally embrace this as their jumping off point to more prosperity in their country, rather than being behind and still trying to catch up. It's like, to me, these leaps in technology, like, yeah, if you're a country that, is looking for something to lift up where you are, this could be, if you just fully embrace it, like when we talk governments, everybody just all in, then what will that look like? What will The government isn't
That's a
right.
perfect segue, Carl, to the next section, which is on peace and governance in the world of nation states. So you're talking about what is a country's response to uplifting its population or advancing its technology and so on. So in this section on peace and governance, Dario says human conflict remains a threat and an obstacle to the achievement of this positive vision. And AI doesn't inherently favor democracy or peace. So AI can empower both positive and negative actors, and preventing authoritarian abuses is crucial. Okay, he also then makes an argument that democracies leading in AI, like the United States, the UK, uh, Taiwan, those could structurally favor a global democracy. But in order to do that, they would have to protect liberty and equality in a way and enhance legal and judicial impartiality through AI mechanisms that we don't understand, that can influence and change the nature of corrupt and abusive and domineering authoritarian governance, right? So I just recently I heard this in the news feeds. I don't know how real it can be, but that it's reported that Elon Musk has been having private conversations with Vladimir Putin.
Yes.
Why? Why? Okay. So that's the open question. It's brand news to me, so I'm not attesting to its validity. And I'm not reading this from social media. I'm reading this from news reports. So this is just hitting the wave. So you can see that there are this idea that both positive and negative actors can be actively engaging AI, just as Russia is using AI now in its disinformation campaigns with respect to the U.S. election. We know this to be happening. There's going to be a need to shift AI towards a more positive outcome. And this is an area where I have profound skepticism that we can really overcome the intentions of people who are in pursuit of power, for its own sake and for their own sake, their personal sake, rather than the benefit of humanity.
And for me, that is a very, and that's where the danger of that is the, what about the rogue nations or states similar to other countries that can leapfrog? Oh, I'm going to use this to further oppress people or do nefarious things, you know, against other people or other nations. So how can you balance that? And I think I was looking at another, like the recently released OpenAI blog post, AI and national security. And I think like OpenAI is working with the government to how does that, how do you, from a safety perspective, and then like uses. And I think they've combated some uses of disinformation, but if we're going into more agentic features, then that's something even bigger, because now you're giving control, you're
Mm-hmm.
enabling AI to control, right, systems. And
Right.
so what does that look like? How do you prevent that sort of things, like tell my agent to go to the nearest, I don't know, water treatment plant and do this, like how do you prevent those kind of, and because I'm more looking at it from the business perspective. Oh yeah, your agent can do this, but I'm like, well, I don't really look at it from, hey, do agent do this, and it doesn't have to do it fully. Maybe it
Mm-hmm.
just needs to do what I say, 10 to 40%. All you need is the 10 to 40%, and we can take care of the 60% for that activity. So like that, yeah.
Yeah. And one of the things that I think is also, we're going to get into community again here, is the experience of people who are used to certain levels of privilege, like having to having to recalibrate, like their calibration systems are off when equality starts to get a little more equal, right? There are a bunch of studies about and this is just a like there are a bunch of studies about women and men talking in meetings, right? And how much a woman talks in a meeting is um, if a woman's talking about 30% men think it's about equal, right? Or 40% men think it's about equal. And that just has to do with being the people who talk the most in meetings. And it's like, even if it's not nefarious, even if it's not like a intent to do this, our calibration systems are way off. And when I say us, I mean the people who are in the countries that are devoting a ton of resources for this seem to be where the things are happening. That I have concerns that that it's our perspectives, and it's our perspectives being represented by our billionaires, right, trillionaire kind of people. I worry, Andy, with you that that equality is a measurement that involves a group of people and who are considered the group, right?
Yeah.
um
Okay, so we're kind of running out of time here, so
okay.
let's hit the last one, and then we'll wrap up. Um, this last one is on work, the future of work, and the meaning that we get from work and from our society. And he says that the short-term comparative advantage of humans will keep humans relevant in the near term, but long-term, AI efficiency will surpass human economic contribution. And
Mhm.
so this raises questions about human purpose in an AI dominated world. So he points out that meaning, our life meaning, is often derived from relationships and personal fulfillment. So it's not necessarily connected to our work productivity. And people can enjoy activities regardless of their economic value. I have a lot of diseconomic activities that I enjoy. So I see all of that. And he throws out one of the, possible solutions to this is a policy change to universal basic income so that everybody has that. But of course, any policy decision to provide for universal basic income is going to be insufficient income for most of the people. That's
Right.
just the way. That's what it's going to be. It's not going to. When they say UBI, universal basic income, they're not saying, "Hey, we're going to give everybody a really good lifestyle from this basic income." No, they're saying we're going to keep you, just alive. You're going to have a lot of leftover, at least if the conservative elements of our society, who believe that humans are inherently lazy and won't work unless they're forced to. If they feel that the only proper incentive is the capitalistic reward concentrated in the hands of those people who are willing to overwork themselves, in some cases to death. All right, got my point of view on that.
Well, so what is what is non-human economic, right? Like,
Yeah.
economics is like,
Well,
I mean, you can map it onto nature, but like nature doesn't
but the
call it
foundation of it
economics.
is that we have energy sources and AI intelligence that accomplish most of the productivity that the workforce of the populations of the planet have previously provided. So that's the basis of the economy. It's an economic shift from human productivity being the primary delivery vehicle for GDP to AI is the majority contributor to GDP in every country.
Yep.
That's the change in the economic landscape.
I did like his mention about the AI minister of finance and AI minister, whatever the finance people, because I was like, hold on a second, that's fantastic. It goes back to the $1 billion one person company, and I always thought from a government perspective, a little dystopian. But who's that guy? What country was it that it was in Argentina. There's like he has he was on a whiteboard and he like Ministry of Transportation, nope. Ministry of this, nope. And he like cut all those ministries, like whatever the things that he didn't feel like was right. But I thought instead of cutting them, well, there's certain things that I feel like AI could probably do a better job or assist in that person to do a better job. Just because sometimes, and not political, but just some head scratchers of you spent money doing what? Why would you do that? Doesn't make any sense. But I don't know. There's a lot of factors that are into play, who, lobbyists and so on. But I think like if you had that as an advisor to it, that, I'm sure that brings up a bunch of bias too, but I'm like, well, AI can process the data using a little bit of predictive analytics and all this data that governments have. I'm sure it can provide like pretty reasonable advice. And the transparency would be, here's what the output, right? Make sure that all the citizens know, hey, this is the recommendations from the AI. This is the data that we put in. This is what it is. And we're either taking that into consideration. And I don't know who's willing to put some political capital into some of that and show, hey, it's like this plan that we have isn't just made up. They just didn't come out of my brain and just, there was public engagement, but also using data, there's AI involved in that decision making.
All right, here's the epilogue for
Yeah.
Dario, and then I'll resign my commission here as a book reporter, because this is a book. This is a book-long essay here. He's wanting to stay with the positive vision, and he says that core human values naturally lead to cooperation and fairness. And I'll just say the one word, kindness. If kindness is a human value that's natural, it's an instinct for us to support other members of our society, whether that's at the tribe level or at the nation level, then we'll arrive at cooperation and fairness. And let's just ask ourselves, is kindness exhibited by our leadership? And when you make a decision, as we will in a few weeks, when you think about
less than
future,
2,
what?
Less than 2 weeks if you're in the US.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, exactly. Is kindness the nature of the person who's going to be in the position of leadership? Okay. So he thinks that AI can accelerate progress towards a better world, and it presents an opportunity for transcendent significance. So let's see if we can move toward that vision. And there we go. Wrapped. Book report wrapped.
Yeah. And in the beginning, what he was talking about was wanting to set the stage for this, which is actually a very optimistic idea, right? And that we have the potential to transform several things that are problematic for us. He said that one of the reasons he's writing this is because people see him as the doom guy, because they talk a lot about risks and safety, because they're Anthropic. They have a constitutional AI, which means that those things are more important than just like I don't know, smash and bash version of reinforcement, which is kind of the other things. And he's saying that he's writing this because he is really optimistic. He thinks that we just need to figure out the alignment issue, which is a big issue, right? Alignment and safety. But yeah, okay. Thank you so much for joining us on this Friday for this deep conversation. We haven't talked about business topics or the experiences of people who are professional business people or business owners, but we all exist in society as well. And these are important conversations to have because the people who are making the things happen are having them with us out loud, saying, we think you should think about this. So that's one of the reasons that we wanted to have the conversation today. Thanks everybody for being in the chat. Great conversations going there. And next week we're back. We're do this Monday through Friday every week. And I haven't put the shows on the schedule yet. So come back. You will learn when all my co-hosts learn what the shows will be. Until then, we hope you have a very entertaining and productive weekend. And yeah, let me pull up the things, because normally we have texts that do this, but this is who we are today. Awesome. Thanks, everybody. See you next week.